He's a great writer. He's the recruiting rhino. He covers recruiting for Tennessee at 247. Ryan, is that recruiting rhino term taken off at all? Because I've tried to push it.
You know what? I don't know that it totally has, but, it probably could use some promotional help elsewhere. I could see that maybe having some potential if others can get behind it.
All right, buddy. We're going to push for that. I know a guy named John Pennington, so maybe if we can work it into his show, then it becomes a thing. We want to get into 4 downs. We want to ask you about 4 prospects that Tennessee is in on. But first, let me get, if you had to pick one, it's our poll question. And then we're going to kind of try to put the Georgia game to bed here in the next hour or so. But I do want to get your thoughts on it. Tennessee was blank against Georgia, out-coached, out-talented, out-refereed, if you had to pick one.
I would lean more toward out-talented. I think Tennessee obviously had opportunities to win that game. But at the end of the day, when you have more talent across the board, as Georgia does, I believe still, even though they've had some of that advantage in terms of stockpiling talent eroded a little bit by the transfer portal, NIL, things like that have kind of chipped away at it. I think they still have more talent across the board. And Oscar Delp, what he did is a perfect example of that. You just have more opportunities to sort of exploit matchups that might favor you. And when you have talent across the board, you can sort of pick and choose where the opponents have weaknesses. And Georgia was more explosive offensively. And I think part of the reason for that was they just had better players. So that doesn't mean Tennessee couldn't have won the game if things had gone differently, but just more chances for a team like that to eventually pull it out. And they did play well enough to win, obviously, if you have more talent. And I think Georgia kind of showed that Saturday night.
That's interesting. Okay, I'm in the minority. Caleb Calhoun agrees with you. Let's go ahead and get to 4 downs right now. Ryan Callahan joining us with 247 Sports. He does a great job, my favorite in terms of covering recruiting. So we've got some prospects we want to ask you about. 4 downs brought to you by our good friend Medicare Misty. Here we go. 4 downs right now.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show. 4 downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Okay, as we get into this, Ryan, let me ask you first your thoughts on one game and the effect that it can or doesn't or does have on recruiting.
As far as just the Tennessee-Georgia game,
just in general.
I think for the most part, it's not usually a big deal in recruiting. Most of the time when you have kids in for big visit weekends, and I kind of mention this all the time, and I feel like people almost don't believe it because it doesn't seem logical to fans. But when you've got in past years when Tennessee would bring in huge visit lists for the Alabama game, and at that time fans knew Alabama was going to win by 3-4 touchdowns. I'm talking before the Josh Heupel era for the most part. When those games were happening, you still were impressing prospects because they come away talking about the atmosphere. A lot of those guys had never experienced games at Tennessee before, and that's what they're looking at. And so a single game, is it going to be a difference maker? Not necessarily. Now a memorable experience. The guys who have been at Tennessee's wins over Alabama the last 2 times, they stormed the field in some cases. They were part of a memorable locker room celebration. Those kinds of things stick with you. But generally speaking, the result of a single game, not going to sway most guys. And for that matter, it doesn't change drastically the view of a program overall. I think that, there are some exceptions, like a win at Georgia could have sent a statement for Tennessee. So I would look at a game like that as maybe a missed opportunity, but not something that's necessarily going to hurt Tennessee. Because I think a lot of kids probably view Tennessee as a top-tier SEC program, just not quite at Georgia's level yet. So it was a missed opportunity, but not one that's going to really hurt them.
It's kind of like chicks. I went on a college tour with my son, and we went to USC, UCLA, a bunch at Vanderbilt, and UMass. He ended up at UMass. And if he had picked just because of the girls there, that wouldn't have been a wise selection. Is that a fair comparison?
I think it is. And I don't think most recruits, though, get caught up in all of that. I think they, even when they are at a memorable win, some of them, do their best not to get swept up in all that. I talked with an offensive line target for Tennessee who was at one of the games last month, and he's like, it was the Alabama game actually, and he was like, I've got guys telling me to commit and all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, I'm loving this, but I can't get swept up in this. I'm not going to make a spur of the moment decision. Most kids kind of shrug that stuff off, and a single win or a single loss isn't going to sway them. They're looking at things like getting to the NFL now, NIL opportunities. Obviously, it's a much more big picture, business-like decision for a lot of these kids. So there are exceptions, of course. Everybody's different, but I think that's the way it is, where a single win's not going to drastically change a whole lot, unless it's one of those wins that kind of catapults you to a different level as a program, like we've kind of seen with some of these, like the Tennessee-Alabama wins the past couple of times. Those were kind of perception-changing wins for Tennessee because it put them on a kind of on a similar level with Alabama, and they previously hadn't been viewed that way.
Agreed. If you pick it on the ladies and a guy picks Georgia, I can't blame him. There's something about the black bands. Here we go. Cooper Mays, tell us what to do.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and
subscribe. All right.
Coop here. First down.
Thanks, Coop. All right. What do we got, Caleb? Prospect number 1 on board as we want to get Ryan Callahan's thoughts in Cruton.
Yeah, Ryan, good to see you, by the way. I wanted to talk about a few 2026 prospects because it seems like 2026 recruiting is much more in season now than 2025 recruiting. So I just want to throw out a few names, and I'll let you name anybody at the end. But first down, 5-star tight end Kendry Harrison. It sounds like Tennessee is a favorite to land him. Where is Tennessee standing with him right now?
They were once one of the top contenders for him. I think the momentum that Tennessee had in that one seems to have faded in recent months. The Vols have not gotten him on campus yet this season. He's now approaching a decision. So I think there are some other teams that have caught his eye, Oregon being one of them. If you remember, of course, Tennessee flipped Design Brame away from Oregon. So Oregon missed out on some tight end targets in the 2025 class. Harrison, a guy they've really prioritized in the 2026 class. That seems to be one of the teams to watch most closely with him as he gets ready to announce his decision in less than 2 weeks now. So we'll see if anything changes there. But Tennessee seems to have lost a little bit of the traction that it had. He's been to Knoxville a few times, but hasn't been back lately. And that one not at the moment, not shaping up as well for Tennessee as I thought it might a few months ago.
All right. Second down. Here we go, Coop.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Thank you. He brings the energy, Ryan. All right, go ahead, Caleb.
All right. So what about 5-star wide receiver Tristan Keys? I didn't think Tennessee would have to go recruiting that heavily for wide receivers, but after what we've seen from the unit this year, seems like they need some help in the future. What do you think?
Yeah, and that's one Tennessee's done a great job with. He's been to Knoxville for a couple games, was at the I believe the Florida game, and then came back for the Kentucky game just a few weeks later. Really enjoyed both of those visits, and I think Tennessee is one of the top contenders there. I think LSU also very much in the picture. He's a guy that's talking about making a relatively early decision, so maybe sometime early next year we'll see if that holds. He didn't rule out waiting until the spring or something like that, and he's going to be a pretty coveted guy. He just recently moved up in our rankings, and as you mentioned, now a 5-star on 24/7 Sports. So I think that's one to watch closely because there's going to be a lot of competition there. But Tennessee, I think, definitely one of the teams to beat right now, and has done a really nice job with him. Definitely made a move with those 2 visits over the past several weeks.
All right, third down, Coop.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Caleb, what do you got?
All right, Ryan, moving to third down. I feel like this guy's leaning more towards Georgia now, but I thought, and he was at the game, I think, this past weekend, but I still felt Tennessee was making a push for him. 2026 linebacker Tyler Atkinson, a 4-star.
Yeah, that's one it's a big time battle. Several teams in that one. He's been a recruit for a long time. If you follow recruiting, you've probably been hearing on our site and others about Tyler Atkinson for probably more than 2 years. He got offers at the end of, I believe, the summer after 7th grade or going into 8th grade, something like that, is when he started getting offers. So this guy's been on the radar for a long time. The interesting thing about him that maybe gives Tennessee a foot in the door here is he was born in Knoxville, lived there for just a couple years. So he's got that connection. He's been to Tennessee several times. Hasn't been there as much lately, though, as other schools have become more of a factor and as the recruiting process has gotten a little more serious and intense for him. So I think Georgia's done a really good job prioritizing him lately. I think the Bulldogs are probably one of the teams to beat. Tennessee definitely in that one, though. There's been some talk of getting him back on campus soon. We'll see when they can make that happen. But I think he's only been to Knoxville once this year, if I remember correctly, and definitely someone that they're battling for, but so are a lot of other teams. And probably still a long way to go in that one either way.
Okay, so you said he's been in recruiting news for a long time.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Ryan. Is he one of those guys that perhaps has gotten caught up in his own recruitment? And I've seen that before. You kind of enjoy the attention a little bit. There was a certain cornerback out of Brentwood Academy that's gone on to NFL fame that you probably, I mean, the first time I interviewed him, he's like, you want to interview me? And then 6 months later, it was like he was the prima donna. But is it one of those guys that you feel like's getting caught up in the whole recruitment of it, or is he just actually truly waiting his time?
No, I think he's still waiting his. I mean, he's a junior in high school, so some guys they're still taking their time. Some guys truly don't know, and you just now, the big element that gets changed going into your junior year is, June 15th of this year is when coaches could actually start directly contacting class of 2026 prospects. So before then, you don't really get the phone contact. You don't get to see truly how badly some of these schools want you. So the last 4 or 5 months have probably been pretty insightful for him to start getting a feel for who's really making him a priority and who's not. So I don't think so. I think if anything, it can sometimes be the opposite, where a lot of those guys that get recruited early get tired of it and they're ready to be done with it by the time they get to the middle of their junior year. So we'll see how he approaches things. I could see that one going either way, but even if he committed early, I think that's one that wouldn't be shut down probably till closer to the end. He's going to continue to hear from other schools because he's a really good prospect, obviously.
All right, good stuff. If anybody has a prospect they want to ask about quickly and they want to put it on the message board, feel free. Caleb has one more.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
See, he gets more energetic as we go. All right, Caleb, what do you got?
Yeah, Ryan, I just want you to throw out a few names, a few other recruiting prospects that kind of slipped through the cracks when I was doing this, or that Tennessee should know about, or Tennessee fans should know about.
Just in the 2026 class, or just
2025 too. 2025 too. Yeah.
Well, in the 2025 class, I'll definitely start with a guy who's scheduled to visit Tennessee this weekend, DeJuan Morris, the USC running back commitment out of Oakland High School in Murfreesboro. Been a big-time target for Tennessee for a while now. They looked for some other running back options earlier this year, kind of looking for a bigger back, and then sort of circled back to him after he committed to USC and have really made a strong push. Kind of took them a while to chip away at it, get him back on campus, and they finally got him back there for the Kentucky game earlier this month, now coming back for his official visit this weekend. That's an important visit, with Tennessee looking to add a second back to this class, which I think takes on a lot more importance, especially given the season Dylan Sampson has had. There really might be an opportunity for a guy like DeJuan Morris to come in and maybe play early next year if he can be that type of guy. And I think he's got a somewhat similar skill set to Sampson. So that's a really important visit to watch, certainly. The other 2025 target to watch, Isaiah Campbell, 4-star defensive lineman, former Clemson commitment, coming off his official visit to North Carolina over the weekend. That one has gotten more interesting recently. I think North Carolina has made a bit of a move there. Tennessee's still very much in it, but the Tar Heels close to home, certainly a chance to be comfortable there at a school he's visited a lot of times, and he and his family, I think, are intrigued by that. So we'll see where that one goes. He's looking to maybe announce the final decision on early signing day. So still some things to watch in the 2025 class. That certainly stands out, and just a ton of names to watch in the 2026 class. Obviously, I always kind of start in-state. Tennessee's done a good job there, getting some early commitments in that class in-state, but still a lot of names left on the board there, and some guys that Tennessee's already prioritized. Caden Harris, the cornerback from West Tennessee, Zach Groves, edge rusher from the Nashville area. So a lot of guys in play, obviously this early, but I always kind of start with, can you build that foundation in-state, which frankly has been a bit of a challenge for Tennessee in the past couple classes. A few guys who've gotten away in-state, trying to change that trend in the 2026 class. And I think they're off to a good start with some of those guys.
Hey, Ryan, may I ask an odd question? Because I haven't covered recruiting closely in a number of years, and especially since before NIL. But you used to always ask prospects about, what did you like about this school? What did you like about their facilities? What do you like about that stuff? And blah, blah, blah. And it went on and on and on. Do you ever just come out and ask a guy, what's the NIL package like? I mean, it would be rude for me to ask you, Ryan, what are you making nowadays? But it really is a factor in recruiting. Do you just come out and say, how do you compare the NIL packages, or how do you treat that?
Yeah, it really is interesting, because even though it's sort of the elephant in the room for everybody, it's almost this unspoken thing that no one's comfortable acknowledging. So recruits often, even if it comes up, there are some who will mention it and say they'll admit that's going to be a factor in their decision. Usually that's about as far as most recruits will take it, certainly in an interview setting. So it really is interesting how that's handled, even though everyone sort of knows it's out there. It's not a secret. It's just one of those things that no one wants to talk about, and certainly not in specifics. So we'll see if that changes over time, but there still is maybe it's just because of the years of it being, illegal. It's just there's just this stigma attached to talking to money. At the end of the day, too, everyone's worried about leverage, right? If anybody has anyone advising them, you're probably advised not to talk specifics. Let teams bid against themselves if it comes to it. You don't want to mention, if you're negotiating for a salary at your job, some people might tell you, hey, don't even tell them a number. Let them throw out a number. So I think it's that kind of thing too with a lot of recruits.
Yeah, that's what Caleb did to me.
But what?
Ryan, we appreciate you, buddy. How do people follow your work?
Yeah, GoVols247.com, and tons going on this time of year with all the crossover in sports, recruiting, getting in the stretch run. It's weird to say we're a little more than 2 weeks away from early signing day and the season's still going. So, tons going on and lots to follow at GoVols247.com.
I've said this before. I mean it wholeheartedly. Ryan is your must follow if you're into recruiting, and I certainly appreciate it, buddy.
Appreciate it, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ryan Callahan. He is the best.